from the head to the heart. My Flowertown press days, head. Reverend Bell, great man, never got that 17 inches until I was on my knees. I was in a place where, I'm going to tell you, if you haven't read it yet, how many people have read the article that just came out 2 days ago by Jackie McMullen from ESPN about Joe Crawford, a guy that a lot of us love, okay? God bless Joe, and I have great respect for him. He has the courage to be transparent. And, he talked about, in this article, about the mental health of us, about the things that we go through, and about the difficulties that we face, both on and off the court, the lack of affirmations that occur in our business. Great article. And it's almost as if I read the article, I said, we should have Joe here as a speaker, but you need to read this because it really speaks to each one of you. Like anybody, you don't have to put your hand up. But as you sit here, I can imagine, my guess is if we're really truthful, almost everybody here has experienced depression. You call it what you want. Down the dumps, hanging, whatever. Call it what you want, okay? But God worked with me. He's got a great sense of humor. And I also realized that what I was getting from him was unmerited, because I sure didn't add up on the scorecard. And if you think about this, if you are out there trying to let me go do this. Let me go to this seminar. Let me hear this and that. Well, that's all well and good, right? But it doesn't really happen until you understand that this is a divine assistance. It's unmerited, and it's inside. It's inside out. It's being. But this word right here, this is what Christianity is all about. We talk about other religions, but when we say that you can take something to the foot of the cross, and not only does he forgive, and this took me a long time to figure this out, but think about this. He does something that we don't do, and that's forget. It's clean slate. Move on from there. And it's pretty amazing. But here's what happens to us. I think we allow things to pile up and pile up and pile up and then explode. But that's what the cross is about. And so if we know, I was truly transformed. I felt like I was a different person. I didn't have to advertise that. I felt that inside out. Now, let me tell you one last basketball story, if you don't mind, because it kind of fits into this. You guys all right with that? Okay, all right. So, I made a deal with God. This part of my life, I got to keep being me, because this really worked for me. I have all this professional success. So don't mess with this, God. Which was, see, in those days, I'll tell you a little secret. The things that like Derek Collins and Pat Frayer would be fined for now, maybe even suspended. I didn't say anything about that. All the words we used to use, not so nice. All the aggression we had, the name calling we were very aggressive. That was kind of the way we operated. I said, oh, God, I can't. You're going to ask me to be a wuss? You're going to ask me to be weak? And I'm reading this stuff, and he says, Jesus. Look at Jesus. Apostle Paul, over and over again. Well, no, but God, no, you understand something. I can't do this deal. Let me have this part for me. Is that okay with you, God? I have this deal. Here's how he taught me. It's amazing. We don't have to push a button. I'm in Philadelphia, and during this time, the gentleman who was part of me praying to receive Christ, George Tolles, was very well connected throughout the country. And he felt that I should have a major public testimony. I had no idea what he was talking about. He said, Ed, can you go to Virginia and meet with this guy, Pat Robertson? And he's going to want to do an interview. He said, there's this show called the 700 Club. I had no idea what that was. He said, you'll figure it out. So I go down to Virginia. I meet this guy, Pat Robertson. Next thing you know, they got cameras, and I'm telling my story. Whoa, now I'm out there. Okay. My buddy did this. He says, I want you to be accountable. So I'll put you out there. I know now why he did that. Well, as a result, I started to get invitations to come speak here. Now, I had no business whatsoever speaking, living in the Philadelphia area. Bobby Jones, who played for the Sixers at that time, a very strong believer, a great testimony for Christ. He was doing different things, and sometimes I would tag along, would do these things. So, yeah, I was transformed. My relationships, family, they became better. Some people looked at me like, you've lost it. I think we're over here a little bit. Wait till you come back. You know that? Anybody ever go through that feeling? Oh, yeah, okay. Well, we liked you where you were before. That was some people. And frankly, what happens is sometimes the people closest to you, it becomes that way. Now, fortunately, my two sons at that time, were young, elementary school, middle school level, and they were, if Dad was in, they were in. So they started to follow me around. So in Philadelphia, I'm speaking at a luncheon, and there was kids there, and I shared my testimony at this luncheon. That was in the afternoon. I got on the train, went to Philadelphia to work the Sixers and the Knicks that night. Darryl Dawkins, you know that name? Playing for the Sixers at that time. There were certain personalities where, it just didn't work. Those things we have in refereeing. You walk on the floor and you look around and you say, oh, this is going to be a challenge. That was Darryl. Darryl and I didn't always work. So I knew my approach to him was usually one of like fire up and get after him. And then he would say, don't yell at me, Ed, and he'd run over and it would be okay. So we get into a thing. He questions me about stuff. Don't question me. Get over there and play. Right? So then he walks over. He says, well, yeah, you talk to me like that all the time. You know how that escalates and escalates and escalates? Then he comes over there, and I started with the four-letter words. Hey, I told you over there. As I turned around to put the ball in play, I looked down, and in those days they used to have these boom mics. And it's standing there, and I'm looking at this boom mic, and I said, you hypocrite. This is going back to Philadelphia, and I just got done same day. That was God's way to say, clean it up. So I said, I forgot the deal. I said, all right, I got the lesson, forget the deal. When I put that aside, frankly, this is where we have to trust. I was scared. I thought, I don't think I can do this. I don't think it's going to happen for me. I may not be as good. I may end up to be just a guy on the staff, or maybe not anymore. And it was miraculous how he did this to me. How I was able to find ways. People in court clubs sometimes hear me go through all these things about, relationship skills and responding skills, all that stuff. That came because my relationship with Jesus showed me, hey, pray about it, you can do this. Pray about it, you can do this. I'm not saying I had it down perfect, but I knew that for me to be successful, I could not compartmentalize God. I had to be all in or not. And you think about where we are. Are we all in or not? Because his grace says, hey, I went all in for you. There was no hesitation, right? Now, so faith really is about being instead of doing. And that, to me, was the difference, because I think I felt like being. Hey, by the way, I don't stand here and say I got it. I don't have it. I'm still processing. 76 years old. I'm really glad they invited me. I know that the Bible says you have to respect your elders. I think that's probably why I got invited. But I'm honored that Pat and Dan did so. Okay, so I just put this in because I knew Pat would love it. And don't we, as referees, hey, come on now. We work really hard. We get in the right position. We make a call. Don't we have the right to be right? Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? Right? We have the right to be right, right? So we stand up, and we have to be right. All right, so here's an example of a right to be right. Bob Davidson, Charlie Manuel, two wonderful fellows. Probably if they went down the street to break bread, they'd be two guys who would probably get along great. But right now, Bob Davidson says, no, I've got the right to be right. Charlie, I don't care what you're saying. Now, baseball is different. I saw a few people raise their hand for baseball. This is really different. I mean, as far as managing all of that. Because, in basketball, we usually are not quite that close, right? All right. But Jim Burr, notice the hair sticking out the left. It goes along with his voice. But he's got the right to be right. He got that play right. And our friend, the soccer referee, really? I think I have the right to be right. Okay, so let's put a face on being right. Because I would imagine that as we get here now, this is the really important part, okay, is that you can relate to this. So our first natural reaction is I'm right, and I'm going to defend. Defensive. Okay, now, Pat used the word approachable. That would never have been my label for the first half of my 32-year career. I have to feel, excuse me, Steve, I don't want to embarrass you, but until Steve married Mary Ellen, he probably would not have been that either. But, talk about God bringing somebody in your life and changing all that. I kid Steve about this all the time. He was a masterful communicator in the last 5 games of his career. No. No. From how many years were you guys married and Steve was refereeing? 20 years. So Mary Ellen, man, you did a great job of getting them through the 20 years. Before that, not so good. Okay. And then, what do? We go on the offense, right? Think about our strategy. Think back about some of the things that you do. How could he possibly question that? It's out of his mind. Okay, Darren mentioned West Virginia. Matter of fact, we used the video in Court Club of Darren and the wonderful communicator, coach at West Virginia. And Darren did his thing. He was very smart. He was textbook, and we used it as a teaching thing. He was not defensive. He was not offensive. He made his point, and then he created space. But don't we do this too? Do we not? Has anybody ever been guilty of that? Hey, do you realize what happened there? I mean, this is going to be somebody else's fault. And in a 3-person game in refereeing, then we have 2 people to blame. It used to be, for years I worked with 1. I only had 1 to blame. So blame shifting is a real natural transition to putting on a face of being right. And then many times we just avoid the issue. We just walk away, which doesn't always fit in. So now, does this not apply to our world on the court, on the field, as well as life? Does it not? I mean, don't some of the things that happen, I know that Josh is in law enforcement. I know a lot of people in officiating are in law enforcement. And you can say, well, gee, conflict. And unless you got a deal going in your community, in your life, in your family where there is no conflict. If you have that deal, then, gee, invite Trudy and I over. We'll spend a week with you. And we'd enjoy that. Okay? So this is another Pat Frere. So the death of ego is really the beginning of life. And isn't that what happens when we give it up to him? We just say, that's what I did on October 5th of 79. I give up. I tried it all. I went through the self-help stuff, but to give it up to him. Now, he really asked us to do that on a daily basis. It's called spiritual breathing. If we had dinner last night with Steve and Mary Ellen, a great time, 2 hours plus, not a word about basketball. Beautiful time, fellowship, and Steve said something really interesting about relationships. I may be stealing part of your thing, Steve, but he said, I was talking about how difficult it is today in communities like where Trudy and I are for kids in youth sports to also find times to worship. Find times, right? I mean, there's soccer here, there's basketball here, there's baseball here. My grandson, excuse me, like, when are we going to do this? Midnight? And it does get in the way. And then Steve made a point. He says, can you imagine if the most important person in your life, let's say your spouse, your best friend, you spent 1 hour a week. That was it. 1 hour a week, 7 days a week, 1 hour a week. How would that relationship go? If that really meant something to you. So if you think about it, church It's church. It's like a pep rally. There's certainly more to, so our relationship really means that we got to know what he's saying to us. We got to talk to him. We got to walk with him. We got to let him, his spirit say, over here. All those things work hand in hand. If we show up an hour a week, that's better than nothing. But frankly, I'm married to somebody who is an Old Testament warrior, and I'm so inspired because every once in a while she'll send me things, and she really gives me nice gentle nudges. I'm blessed, okay, in so many ways because of that. Now, I want to talk about what we face